Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I want to discuss the absolute chaos on the roads of Kent leading up to our main ports of Dover and Folkestone. I'd like to actually discuss a few things. I'm going to do two videos on matters arising here, but this one is going to be on exactly how various factors have contributed to a perfect storm, how Brexit is chiefly responsible, no pun intended, and how we can look forward to much worse still to come this year and especially next year. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So first of all, what's happening? Because if you're reliant on the mainstream media and you don't live in Kent, you may not even know what's going on. Basically, the roads towards our major ports in Kent are knackered. Operation Stack, which is used to manage massive demand, is permanently in operation right now. I noticed when some hauliers were trying to explain the situation, some smart-ass trying to play down the impacts of Brexit, saying, Operation Stack gets deployed a few times every year. That was before Brexit, nothing to see here. Sure enough, yes, there are times when the routes to Dover in particular get overwhelmed and Operation Stack is needed. Operation Stack has been in place for a very long time. It actually used to get deployed more than the 3 or 4 times a year that this fellow was saying as well, I think. But it was deployed like well over a dozen times in January alone, if I recall rightly. Right now it's in place all the time. Operation Stack has existed for 20 years. Before this year is out, before 2022 is finished, we will have deployed it way more times in this year than in the entirety of its 2 decades of existence. Now, when I last talked about the mess on the roads, I cited, for example, the lack of ferries thanks to P&O sacking their entire British fleet without their slave crew being in place to take over straight away. But there have been numerous factors, which I'll go through, before picking through the relative importance of each. So let's start with the most easily dealt with. Start of the week, we had a Eurotunnel freight train breakdown. The repairs had to take place in the tunnel itself, blocking the whole thing. This caused increased delays, but were obviously not down to Brexit. The fact that we didn't have the capacity to shift demand was, but not the breakdown itself. And also that was dealt with, so that was like caused delays on a particular day. But that's an example of a factor made worse by Brexit, not caused by it, and not the sort of thing we'd really dwell on too much because it happened in a day and it affected that day and then that was that. Second, some stormy weather. It's a bit windy here. I don't know what it's like in Kent at the moment, but we have had some stormy weather at the weekend, certainly, that made the crossings tricky. We're an island. Even Dominic Raab knows that now. That means to get off the island to other countries, we need to go either over or under the sea. Now, we have some capacity to go under the sea. That's pretty good, but it is limited. So stormy weather is a bit of a problem. Again, Brexit's not the cause of that. Third, we have the problems with ferries. P&O are the largest ferry operator in Britain, and their recent actions have led to reduced capacity. This is a massive problem for us. Now, this one is Brexit. Indirect, but it is. That is, it wouldn't have been like this without Brexit. But it didn't have to happen even with Brexit. That was down to the government. Because our severe trade Brexit barriers, it's now harder for logistics to operate. This includes ferry operators. Profits are squeezed as their service is being run less efficiently due to all the checks and delays between Britain and France that were not needed before Brexit. Now that checks and other paperwork is needed in both directions, because that's why this year is much worse than last year, because it's now in both directions, created huge pressure on the company who decided to dispense with the British portion of their fleet. Note that all 800 British workers were sacked, but not a single EU worker. P&O employ 3,000 people on these routes. Only the British ones were sacked. You try telling me that Brexit has nothing to do with it. Fourth, and this was news to me until a few days ago, I have to say, but GMVS went down a week ago today. It's like been down a week now. This is the Goods Vehicle Movement Service. It's the government released it at the start of the year to deal with customs controls. It failed immediately because it was never properly tested before going live. Seems it's gone wrong again, catastrophically. It's so badly wrong that it's completely taken down while someone gets the duct tape out. There's supposed to be an update from the government, basically as this video goes out, I think midday today. supposed to be an update. Now, without this system, everything has to be done manually, because it's impossible to get things sorted out in advance using the digital systems, because that's what's normally supposed to happen. You get everything logged, everything sorted, long before you ever make your way to the port. And if there's any problems, that'll get flagged up there and then. That's the idea, that you don't get trucks going to the port until they're ready, cleared and all the rest of it, so that all that should need to happen then is some checks. And that's not going to be applying to everyone. Now, when it has to be done manually, obviously that takes much longer. But also, what if something's not quite right with your paperwork? And this is obviously massively Brexit. Without leaving the customs union single market, this system isn't needed. Yeah, we need to use the original system for dealing with goods coming in from third countries around the world. But as the vast majority of goods coming into Britain come via other single market countries, or did do at the time, talking the present tense, it's the past tense now, sorry. We only needed to deal with about 1% of the current workload. But we left the customs union single market. We're now the third country. For no benefit to ordinary British citizens, not one person who is not a hedge fund manager or beneficiary has gained anything from this move. Other than maybe David Frost, who got a job out of it, for which he keeps seeming to get promoted every time he messes it up. But we left, and this system is part of the result. Without it, we can't cope. Because like I said, you can't just do everything manually. It's ridiculous. And here's the thing. This is a bigger issue than the ferries or the windy weather. And it doesn't matter whether you believe that or not. Because let's say you really want to believe in Brexit. Because Boris keeps saying, let's believe in Brexit. You just need to believe more in Brexit. So you believe with all your might. You apply whichever lens diminishes the size of direct Brexit impacts. Okay, fine. The issue with the ferries and the weather will not be permanent. Don't matter what lens you put in front of your face, you can recognise that's not permanent. The need to deal with massive amounts of red tape and checks is permanent. That's Brexit. Because we had queues even when GVMS was working. Nothing like what we've got now. But let's consider why GVMS failed. And failed so badly that it's been completely offline for a week. Might be back online later today. Don't know, maybe not. I can catch up with that one in the second video that I want to do on issues arising from this. Now, from what I can find out, this failure is caused by, don't know. Came as a complete surprise to HMRC. No idea what was going wrong with it. Also bear in mind that this system came online at the start of this year and failed immediately because it wasn't properly tested, like I say. The government have been so bad with their project management, they failed to start work on Brexit systems in time, and when they did start, they made the sort of basic errors that would have lost my students mark on their project management exams if they were as oblivious to the basics. Because that's what gets me about this whole thing. I can appreciate, so when you're doing something that no one else has done, you need a complex system for something that no one else has really done, mistakes will be made. And nobody has ever raised trade barriers with their neighbours in peacetime. But I've taught project management to teenagers, and they would know better than to run these projects as the government have done. And it's also worth noting, as there are no checks going on at our borders with the EU at all now, we're losing millions of pounds in import duties a day. More money the government is pissing away in the middle of a cost of living crisis that they claim they can do nothing about. And who is the beneficiary of that money? Because if we're not getting the money, someone is. People in the EU. Let's see the Daily Express talk about that. And our old friend Michael, whom I cite quite a bit, and he knows his stuff on logistics, pointed out that with our Brexit, we've basically got two choices. First, we can choose empty shelves. Obviously, the government are not going to choose empty shelves. They can't allow that because it would be an incredibly visible and highly damaging impact of Brexit. Second, you keep giving an advantage to EU exporters by not chasing import duties and giving the green light to smugglers. So the government chose the second because people don't see the impacts of smuggling and EU businesses having an advantage over British businesses without it being pointed out to them, and there's not that many people pointing it out to them. But the reason why everything is a mess on the roads of Kent isn't even just because of the problems that have thrown up all at once. You know, the stormy weather, a train blowing up. It didn't actually blow up. The ferry issue, even GVMS going down. All of those things were problems. But it's Easter. For the first Easter in 3 years, people are not facing travel restrictions. or at least not COVID travel restrictions. So lots of people wanted to make up for it and get themselves onto the continent for a holiday. Basically, there has also been extra demand for travel across our borders at just the time we had lower capacity. And this is worth bearing in mind. Like, even when GVMS, the ferries, Eurotunnel, and even the weather is all working to our advantage, we still have much reduced capacity compared to 3 years ago. An increase in demand is going to cause problems even without the extra failures. This is Easter. Imagine what it's going to be like in summer. More holiday makers, but also greater demand for freight. Hospitality businesses want to power up this summer on both the continent as well as around here to make up for the last couple of years. So that means more food and drink being bought on either side and wanting to be shifted both ways across that Brexit border. So we can expect an increase in both the number of trucks and the number of cars wanting to get across these borders. Even without considering the biometric checks coming by the end of this year, because that's a problem for next year, how's that going to work out? During COVID travel restrictions, what used to happen, because last year, trade naturally ramped up from summer onwards, and Dover gave over like a car lane to trucks to manage the increases in demand for freight. That was possible because there weren't as many cars because of the COVID travel restrictions. This year, we are expecting both car and truck traffic to massively increase. This summer, even if the government do delay standards checks again, as seems almost certain now, it's going to be interesting. And I'd like to talk more about how this should be a warning to us of the importance of freedom of movement, but I'll do that in another video. I don't think that's going to be tomorrow, unless something spectacular happens. I think I'll save that for Saturday. But until then, hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.